It's like, Danish attention to details. Very, very smooth, lovely, and it's wood. It's not plastic.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want plastic. This is so interesting. Really, listen to this. I've been working with change and transformation for nearly 2 decades now. And I always taught people about being willing to change and change your company and all this stuff. And then suddenly I had to change. It was really fascinating because I didn't really think about it like that.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for taking time to talk to me.
Of course.
Because I know that it's probably, a lot of requests for similar type of thing. People are feeling that they have to have.
It's quite a lot, yeah. I have to say, we get about 40 a day in average.
40 a day, right? Yeah. So you're one of my kind of top guns, as they say, because you're
busy
really
man.
And you know what? I've done this kind of not trick, but I was thinking of people I was talking to, and what the first word which described the person.
Yeah.
And in your terms, it was smile for whatever reason.
So okay, wow! Thanks.
Knowledge, but your smile came into my mind immediately. Bum,
oh, thank you. That means a lot to me. I mean,
yeah, smile because you are not just smiling like because of the sake of smiling, but you are doing this thing which I still have.
Yeah, you just still have it. Do you use it?
Yes, I use it.
That's good. And the batteries are not flat yet.
The battery is never flat, and people are impressed. The kind of my value, I think, went up in the eyes of my friends. Let me explain my viewers. So I've got a present for Christmas from Martin, and I thought, how wonderful, new mobile phone. I opened it, and it was a sort of mobile phone, but it was a wooden one. And it's supposed to give us a message that please do not overuse these, technical devices. Don't miss life. And then that's very clear message. And really more and more, not only me, but a lot of people realize that they look through the eyes of the viewer, not really their own eyes.
They don't. It's very sad. And by the way, that wooden phone you're sitting with there was produced by my dad, which, by the way, since then passed away. So it's a bit of history you're having there.
Oh, really?
And very unique, yeah.
Excellent quality. It's like Danish attention to details. Very, very smooth, lovely, and it's wood. It's not plastic.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want plastic.
For me, it's like, there is in neuro-linguistical programming, there is anchoring. Yeah. So anchoring. And I actually spoke to your colleague, countryman, the gentleman called Make Viking.
Okay, don't know him.
Yeah, he is the guy who is here. He's head of Danish Happiness Research Institute.
Oh yeah, I think you mentioned that. That's the guy with the Hugo, right?
Hugo, that's right.
Yeah,
Lieke and etc. Art of Making Memories.
Yeah, it did very well, his series. It was very impressive what he managed to push through there.
And this is the part of making memories. So it's your things which you have, and it makes you feel good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I hope, by the way, that you are well and keeping up your good spirit because your entire industry is in disarray at the moment, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So 0, and I expect it's going to last for some period of time. And in fact, that my worry is I don't want to go back, like a lot of people do not want to go back to the old way of life. We want to keep the good part, like hugging, social thing, but we don't want all this rubbish. And that is absolutely rubbish when we are upset for not being able to buy some designer clothes or some scratch in our car or some small thing which really doesn't worth it. Even the money itself, I think, lost its value. I mean, what money means if you don't have your immune system? Yeah. What is it for? Nothing. So I really feel that if we start, I've read somewhere that in China, they are queuing for Louis Vuitton, like in the old days. And I thought, what the shit? So people didn't return.
They didn't get the message right.
Yeah, I've got nothing against Louis Vuitton, good quality stuff, but does it worth spending your life, queuing?
No. It's sad. I think some people will get the message. I think a lot of people of fear of change will go back to the default behavior. Definitely.
Right. May I please ask you what? Because my kind of question, I was thinking what to ask you, and you were warning about big corporate manipulation of consumers, that lack of understanding what consumer wants, etc. But what do you think has changed in your thinking, during this coronavirus? And what do you think? What your message would be to business? Did it change to what you were saying before, that there was lack of
Sure,
understanding of
sure.
basic consumer needs? Let me maybe introduce you first, if you
Yeah,
don't mind. So
yeah,
shall we
sure, of course.
start? Yeah. Martin Lindstrom is I want to say that you're a good guy, you're a generous person, lovely smile, but obviously it's, it's part of you. But what you've done in your life, you've written absolutely fantastic books. And one of them, which is I like it more than small data, is biology. I found the book is absolutely fascinating. And then came another one, small data, attention to details. And you visited like, I think 2,000 consumers in 77 countries. You were actually socializing with them, trying to understand what they really want. And then going through this neuroscience, basically, to understand what's happening in people's brain when they make a purchase. But you've done it not because you want to manipulate your customers, but because you want to make them better, happier, and help them to make a rational choice. Yeah. So, and then you're a fantastic speaker. As I said, I mentioned you in Kyiv. People still remember you. Very excellent presentation with the very high tech, and the video and the sound was brilliant. And then you're, of course, one of the 50 thinkers, independent selection of great minds in the world. I think your place is 19th, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know actually what it is. I remember I'm on the list, which is the most important thing for me. I can't remember what number it is.
And then, of course, I think Time mentioned you as the most influential business thinkers today. So one of 100 people who influenced business more than anybody else. So a lot of stuff you've done. And I'm sure I haven't mentioned your brand company, and you're sending these things I already mentioned. But you are very creative, and you teach creativity. You teach creativity in business. You teach creativity in everything you do, really. I mean, by being creative.
Well, thank you for your kind words. I know I can say the same about you, I have to say, because you are connecting minds across the world and bringing them to your region of the world with great success. And I've done that for many years. And really, I think the way I was introduced to you was through Marshall Goldsmith, actually.
Yes, yes.
And the fact that Marshall is introducing you tells a lot about who you are, right? So well done.
Yeah. Well, I already interviewed Marshall, and he used the bad word, which I have to beep. I've never heard anything from him like that. But he was so really concerned about the state of economy and the future of the business.
Yeah, Marshall and I have talked quite a lot about it, and I think we're all very upset about what's going on at the moment. But I always choose to see this in a positive light, and there is quite a lot of things which are positive right now. I think what's fascinating about change. This is so interesting. Really, listen to this. I've been working with change and transformation for nearly 2 decades now, and I always taught people about being willing to change and change your company and all this stuff. And then suddenly I had to change, which is really fascinating because I didn't really think about it like that. And what I realized in this thing, and talking to a lot of our clients who are going through this tremendous amount of change, is that if you do not change as a reflection of COVID-19, then you didn't get the message. And one of our clients, Lowe's, which is a larger retailer in the United States, Tim Lowe, he said to me on a call the other day, it took 6 years for us to transform our store. We've been working with him and his team for 6 years to transform them. And it's paid off. It's today the most innovative chain in the United States. But it took 6 years. He said what took 6 years took only 6 weeks during COVID-19. That's how fast we changed. Mm-hmm. And what I've learned through this process is that this is the moment for you, not just to change, but also to shine as a leader. I think a lot of people go into panic. A lot of people start to squeeze the money, start to fire people, start to put fear into the organization. But in reality, you won't be judged by how many money you are earning, or it didn't say on your grave or thumbstone, didn't say, well, he earned $1.2 million through life, but it talks about how you were as a person. And I think right now with COVID-19, it's the moment for you as a leader to change. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that choose to go into a panic mode and instead really are not using this wonderful, negative, but wonderful opportunity to see the world in a different light once we are on the other side of the tunnel, right?
Right. And change, like positive change, to understand kind of the fundamental values. Even in behavior, for example, I do a lot of gardening. I've never done it before.
No?
But now I'm enjoying all this time planting of tomatoes and see these small leaves going up and then eating your own rucola. And it's something what our, the parents did. And it's such a wonderful, and that's the essence of life. I mean, no matter, all this plastic, all this, stuff is not important. Important is
it is very important, I think. And I think that one of the things I'm writing about in my latest e-pocket book, which I released free of charge for everyone.
Do you mind if I give a link, if I attach it?
No, please give the link to everyone. I want everyone to read the book. And really the book, I wrote the book because I really realized that every day I learned something about human psychology due to the situation we're in right now. But what was really fascinating about this is that it was not just me experiencing it. It was almost like the entire world was synchronized, right? And did the same, went through the same change overnight. And let me just put this into perspective. It's a new theory of mine. In marketing speak, we use a word called entry point. And really through life, we have 7 entry points. An entry point is where something so profound happens that it changes your entire lifestyle. And you are opening up your eyes for completely new products and services and a way of living. An entry point is the first day to school. An entry point is the first time you fall in love. An entry point is when you move from home. An entry point is when you get your first job. An entry point is when you are retiring. So there's 7 well-established entry point throughout our life, and I'm sure you've tried one of them. I mean, when your wife got pregnant and suddenly you had a kid, suddenly you saw baby strollers everywhere, right? That was an entry point. You've never seen it before. Suddenly they were all over the place, right? And that's an entry point where we take our filter off, put another filter on. Now, guess what? I actually believe that we are, for the first time in recent memory, experiencing the 8th entry point. The 8th entry point is really a synchronized behavioral change happening in the world almost simultaneously. Never seen this before. And it's happening for multiple reasons. The first reason is that what we're experiencing right now is so profound that it creates an emotional bookmark in our brain. You mentioned one of my book, Biology, B-U-Y-ology, which is based on the largest neuroscience study in the world, where we scanned 2,000 consumers' brains using fMRI. And one of the things we looked into was an area called a somatic marker. A somatic marker is something so dramatic that you'll never forget it. It's what I call an emotional bookmark. Invented by Antonio Damascus, he really said that you're not only able to see it, you can actually scan the brain and see that thing.
So
and I think
changes, chemical transformations in your body.
Totally, yeah. And a good example of that would be 9/11, where I think most people remember not only where they were, but also who they're together with, even who they called on that particular day.
I know exactly what I was doing. I was on the way from Frankfurt, and I remember I thought it's a movie, but deep inside I knew that it's not a movie. Yeah. And I remember in details. I even feel the smell of the train. I mean, it's amazing.
But it's funny you're saying you remember the smell of the train, because the study we were part of actually shows that the closer you are to ground zero when it happened, the more people recall the sense of smell, touch, taste, sound, and sight. It actually was memory encoded even more profound into our brain the closer one was to ground zero when 9/11 happened. So that is a negative somatic marker, and a negative somatic marker can be scanned. You can see it in the brain. And really, what we're seeing right now is a negative somatic marker. But it also have some other factors to it, which I find scary, and one of them is fear. One of the areas I've been studying a lot is the area called the amygdala, which is the fear spot in our brain. And amygdala is really almost on overdrive at the moment. And I want to take you into a mindset here, which is crazy. But think about this. I certainly watched a lot of movies over the last 2 decades about viruses. I watched one called Contagion, right? I'm not sure if you watched it. It was a bestseller movie. You have all the James Bond movie, you have The Rain, you have Black Mirror, you have all these different amazing movies, but also incredible scary movies, all about how a virus is spreading around the world, how people are killed and they're running for life. We've been through basically 2 decades of pre-trailer for COVID-19. And it's built up a sense of fear. And what we know from our studies today is that fear is accumulative. It means that if you experience one set of fear over here and another format of fear over here, they actually merge together and accumulate your fear level in your brain.
And fear of people around us. I mean, I think it's
anything. And anything. So you would have tried it, for example, if you sadly would have had a burglar moving into your house, emptying it for all your stuff. I'm pretty sure that the day after you would be afraid when walking on the street, even though there's nothing to do with what happened in your home. So fear transports across channels and it accumulates. So the more you expose for it, the more fearful you become. And I think we already saw that happening with the Daisy TV commercial back in the 60s, where one of the candidates was showing how a nuclear bomb will be reacted if the opposite party was going to win. Very scary commercials. By the way, everyone hated the commercial, but that candidate won. And what is fascinating about fear is that fear has now moved up to another degree. And my point of proof here is really the situation with the world. And I'm going to say something to you right now, which is super, super controversial. So my apologies up front. I mean it with my best intentions, and what I want to say up front before I say these controversial words is I have a lot of people which have passed away because of COVID-19. I feel horrible for all of them, no doubt about that. But here's the reality. When swine flu happened in, I believe it was 1994, 2 billion people, that's billion with a B, were infected. And 203,000 people died. Now, without any comparison, I don't recall a frenzy back then when swine flu happened, like what we're experiencing now. So what I would claim is that fear has been stored in our brain, and once it's been let out of the floodgates, we've gone into panic. And because of social media, remember when swine flu was released, Facebook had only been around for 4 years. So that whole social media amplification of fear, remember a lot of stuff online, it's all about fear, did not exist. So what we saw was that it was really contained emotionally. I think the biggest fear I have right now with COVID-19 is not, and I want to stress this is said with all sorts of respect, but it's not necessarily only all the people passing away, sadly, because of COVID-19. It's also the ramifications when it comes to the depression following this. And by that, I mean the fact that people feel isolated, they feel vulnerable, they feel they have no sense of purpose. Suicide rate, I'm sure, will go up. Domestic violence will go up. We will have some huge consequences with 40 million people in the United States without a job, and a lot of people without a job in Europe, Eastern Europe, and Middle East, and South America for that sake, and Asia, basically all over the world. Which means that this is not just a matter about COVID-19, it's also the aftermath of this. So what I'm saying here is this is an eighth entry point. And I think you can choose to say, my God, I'll go into panic mode. Let's not spend money. Let's hold ourselves back and wait until this thing is over. Or choose to say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to see this as my point of entry into a whole new behavioral change. Start to understand how consumers are dramatically changing differently as they are right now, and find completely new business models and design them and launch them right now. And if you do that, you will certainly be categorized along with GE and with General Motors and with Kraft Heinz and with Burger King and with Avis and with Trader Joe's and a range of other companies, which, by the way, all of them began 1 or 2 years after a recession took place in the United States or worldwide, these companies managed to go against the tide and really create a whole new business model. So as horrible as the situation is right now, I think it's a wake-up call. And it's a wake-up call on three different levels. One, wake-up call on a personal level. Hey, didn't you take things for granted? I mean, I remember my dad always switched off the light in my room. I got insane of it. But there was a reason why he did it, because he experienced the Second World War, or at least parts of it. Two, is our purpose in life really only about consumption? Or is there more to this? And three, have we become too comfortable in our lives? And should we, in reality, start to re-question what we're doing and find new ways of waking up to get more value for who we are, where we want to go, and give to other people? So I think there's a lot of things which people have to understand is really happening right now. You can either grab it or you can just let go, right?
I know that Joe Vitale, the guy from The Secret, and he said it's divine conspiracy. He believes that it happened for a purpose, and that it's like wake up call, as you said. It's really, I mean, yes, we can kind of build this somatic, how do you call it, somatic
marker,
right, and for life, and this have scars for life, or we can overcome it and really see opportunities and in changes. And of course, every movement out of comfort zone is discomfortable. I mean, it's not really easy road, but then when we change and we go somewhere and we start something and we revalue our business model or our, it's really kind of, first of all, it channel our energy, not into completely kind of thinking the same thought, millions and zillions times a day, but put our energy somewhere else. And that's what actually one of the reasons why I started that. And thank you for this, because I think it's just to help myself as well as to help other people, to find a new way. I mean, yes, of course, those who lost their loved ones is a terrible thing, but life is not fair in a lot of respect, and life goes on. So we have to become wiser because of that. And I think really, and interesting that you were saying about new businesses. And I remember your speech, which we did in London when you were elected for this, 50 thinkers, and you were saying that some companies started washing machine for trolleys, supermarket trolleys, and it was before all this coronavirus, and now it's a wonderful idea. So people would know, consumers would know that yes, it has been cleaned, before you take it, and it makes people more secure. And for someone, it's a new business and a good business.
Okay, I'll give you an example. So one of our clients is a company called Intertek. Intertek is the leading quality assurance company in the world. You would not know them, but you would know what they're doing, because they're the one checking the black box on Air Force One. They're the one checking the catering going into the White House. They're the ones checking oil platforms for Shell or big ships or vessels for Maersk. They're the one which is the backbone of quality assurance, so we know the wheels are spinning. Now, these guys did something extraordinary. About 5 weeks ago, André Lecroix was the CEO of the company and a good friend of mine. He said, well, listen, what are we going to do when we go back to the airplanes or when we're going back to the hotels? How do we know if this is safe at all? So he created something called ProTech. And ProTech is really a quality assurance company for airline seats, for lavatories, for hotel rooms. So you as a businessman will know when you go into that room, it's been verified, it's safe. And ProTech was created in 3 weeks and was launched across 100 countries. Given the fact that they were actually all sitting in the small little offices or homes, coordinating this through digitally, and it became a huge success. And I asked Andrea the other day, actually this morning, about what made them turn around things so quickly in a company with close to 100,000 staff. And he said, listen, the core values we have established and the mindset we established and chemistry between people made it very easy for us to turn this around, because we are aligned where we wanted to go as an organization. So this was just an add-on to where we should go. And it's paid off tremendously. I actually think that every business you can think of right now represents a new opportunity. I think you can throw any industry at me right now, and we would be able to brainstorm and come up with a completely new business model. I don't think that's the challenge. I think the challenge is in your mind. I think, as I said in an article I wrote just prior to COVID-19, I basically said, mention one single industry which have not been disrupted by technology. And if you really are thinking a lot, you may come up with the answer, what about toilets? Toilets have really not changed a lot. We go to the toilet and that's it, right? No, it's not true. In fact, in Japan, there's this brand called Toto, and they just launched a toilet which are analyzing whatever you leave behind. And they actually will give you a health status straight away. And those data will be sent to your doctor. And if there's an issue, they will contact you. And by the way, you'll get vitamin pills on a regular basis, which are fitted, customized to your health situation. That's a freaking toilet we're talking about here, right? And
isn't that the intrusion into privacy a little bit? So even your toilet kind of, but yeah, of course not. But
is it? Well, no, let's just take. I'd love to take that discussion. What is the difference between this and having a smartphone with an app which can track every single second of what you're doing, who you're talking with, who you're visiting, what you're buying, who you like and dislike, and where you're going and what you anything, versus going to the toilet where the toilet will tell you the health status and this and that. What's the difference between that and an Apple Watch, which can tell you that the heartbeat rate is not as good as it is, and by the way, your premium rate on the insurance has to go up, which is it's the case right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think if you are a person of extreme integrity and privacy focused, absolutely it is, as it is with everything else. If you choose, on the other hand, to say, okay, listen, they may know, under certain privacy circumstances, know that your health is deteriorating at the moment, but they will also save you with the vitamins you take and a call from the doctor telling you there's blood in whatever you leave behind, and that actually means that there is a serious problem on its way, and you will never discover that.
Life,
and,
of course, yeah.
I mean, then what's the price you want to pay here?
Sure.
And I don't necessarily have a view on that. But I want to say, I think this whole discussion comes back to the fact that even freaking toilets are undergoing disruption at the moment. And I think with the COVID-19, a lot of companies and industries which are very comfortable in what they're doing really have received a wake-up call. And they can either choose to take it or they can choose to ignore it. And with that, the statistics from S&P 500 is showing the outcome, and the S&P is basically showing that within the next 10 years, only 10% will survive.
Right.
That's it. Right? I mean, it's like, so this is the moment, right?
Right. And I remember another thing which you keep advertising, that ask your employees. I mean, ask your customers, of course, but ask your employees. Yeah. They're very creative. And there were a lot of examples during this period when employees were coming with great decisions and great solutions. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the moment to build an amazing culture. And don't get me wrong, this is super difficult, because if you're under enormous pressure and you can't pay the bills or the salaries, and now you have to be Mr. Good Guy, Mrs. Good Guy, it's super hard. But you have to remember that the fear level you have as a leader probably is less than the fear level of people which are paying their food on the in the fridge every day, and if they don't get the money that day, they will run out. Well, you may have a week or two longer to survive. So this is a moment for you to let your culture thrive, and you can either choose that by pumping fear into the organization and make everyone run around, or you can choose to do that by giving people a mandate to really reinvent your business model. And I've seen that happening around the world, big ways, where you're giving the dreamers in the organization a voice to redesign the organization and come up with completely new models. And you know what? It maybe doesn't pay off. It maybe doesn't go into break even, but it's certainly given everyone a sense of hope, a sense of ownership, and a sense of joy in a period where I think a lot of people are affected by depression to some extent. So this is a moment to build culture. But on the other hand, I also want to say it's also the moment for you to build your brand. And by that, I mean, it is in times of need you define your brand. And when we've done workshops around the world, and believe me, we've done a lot with changing companies. When people ask us to help them developing their ideal customer journey, the first question I always ask people is, when was the last time you had an amazing experience? Think about it. And after a couple of minutes, people will come up with a story, and typically it's a story when they were in need. And it will typically be a story where they were late to the plane, or they checked in and someone became sick in the family or something like that. And it had one thing in common: the person behind the counter or the person in front of you went the extra mile and did something out of his or her authority. And that had such a profound impact that it's almost like you feel you owe your life to that person. But even more thought-provoking is the fact that all of the stories I've heard typically were 10 to 15 years old. Mm-hmm. So they're sticking to the mind. That little gesture had a profound, lifelong impact on the consumer, the customer. But guess what, folks? This is the moment. This is the moment where people are in need. I mean, you cannot find a more extreme moment than this right now. And even worse, as I talked about with the entry point, that everyone feels the same, with very few exceptions. So instead of you going out burning money on marketing, advertising, branding, communication, let's do all this, take all these money and channel them into delivering more. Now, I called Qantas, the airline company, when I was stuck in Australia the other day, had to go to Switzerland, and they just hang up on me.
Yeah, terrible.
They just hang up. I called Singapore Airlines, and they were friendly as ever. And I think that's a really good example about where I'm going to be loyal in the future. Singapore Airlines is just as much in a crisis as Qantas is. There's no difference, really. It's both, at this stage, government-backed big way because of the crisis. Yet Singapore Airlines decided to say, let's give people a tremendous service so they'll come back again in 2022 or whatever. And they built the brand. They don't need the ad. That is the ad. That's me talking to you right now. And by the way, telling that in my recent pocketbook, the free book I talked about, was been read by more than 1 million. In fact, the CEOs of multiple airline companies reached out to me straight after and said, why am I not mentioned? I said, you're not mentioned in the book because you didn't do a bloody thing. You were just silent, thinking that you're doing your job. But the reality here is, this is the moment, right?
It's a wonderful thing, because I think you mentioned in one of your books that people don't remember what you say, but people remember what you do and how they felt during that time. And this is the emotional, this is another, how do you call it, somatic marker, but in a positive way, right? So you remember that, and you remember kindness, and you remember some tap on the shoulder. And it's really, that's what we remember. It's really absolutely true.
It's crazy, right? But I think, so one of the things I've been writing a lot about over the last years, when I launched a book called Small Data. Small data are defined as seemingly insignificant observations you make in people's lives. It's a contrast to big data, which is all about correlation. Small data is all about causation, the reason why. One of the things I realized when writing the book is that we're all out of balance. And it's the gap between being balanced and out of balance, which represents the opportunity for a new brand, a new service, a new product. COVID-19 is representing a new out of balance. And it's not just necessarily fear, i.e. the amygdala in overdrive, which is certainly one out of balance, and which you will see with new products and services coming out. There's also another thing which I'm mentioning a lot in my pocketbook, and which I'll recommend everyone to look into, is the fact that we're understimulated by the sense of touch. Now, many years ago, I wrote a book called Brand Sense in 2003, which was the first book in the world recognizing the idea of sensory branding or sensory marketing. And really, it's a simple idea that we are not just connected through the sense of sight as we are now, sense of sound. We have, in fact, at least 5 senses in total. And as I'm writing in the book, whenever I go off my endless stream of conference calls after 9 hours, I felt like I was observing the world through a two-way mirror, but I never really participated in it. because we're stimulated by two senses, but understimulated by the other three. And one of the things we have realized is that one of the biggest untapped potential through the COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 is the sense of touch. Touch, or the sensory organ, is really the biggest one we have, because our entire body is installed with tactile sensation. But even more, there was an experiment done some years ago where the scientists were petting rats, and he had two sets of rats, a control group and his original group. And the first group was given water and fed and touched every hour. The second one was fed but never touched. And by the way, they died faster. They didn't learn as quick, and they were certainly not very happy. There's a direct correlation between happiness and the degree we're touching each other. Now, what happens when we're all put into detention? 3 billion people on planet Earth has been put into detention. And we're coming out on the other side, and we're told regularly by government we can't touch people, we need to have 2 meters of distance. And by the way, if you touch someone, you have to behave like the person was basically poisoning, and you have to sanitize yourself to a degree where it looks almost ridiculous. What happens from an emotional point of view? Well, what happens is we will go into depression. And that's, by the way, the reason why, and this is so fascinating, I started looking at small data, right? And one of the things I started to notice was that people are petting more dogs. I mean, literally, I was walking on the street and there was a stranger going up to a stranger's dog and petting it, which I've never really seen like that before. So I looked into the numbers, and guess what? Pet sales is up 400% over the last month alone. Why? Because we want to touch things. So what I'm saying to you now is that's an opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. And you will notice that through this crisis, there will be an enormous amount of opportunities for us, not just to please consumers and good people like you and I, but also to see a business opportunity. And I think that's where businesses have to wake up for a second. Mm-hmm. Stop looking at the world as you're producing hammers, and because of that, everything looks like nails. Because right now, they're screws instead. And it's very different, right?
It's very interesting, but it requires so much. I mean, it requires really brainstorming, creativity, really talking, all sort of things, really to find some fresh thinking.
It does. It's funny you're saying it, because we get, I think on a daily basis, around 150 to 200 requests for people would like to get advice from us during this crisis. It's actually been a little bit too overwhelming, so much so we can't even reply back to people anymore. But so we decided, I haven't even told you about this, so you're the first hearing it. We actually decided that we wanted to set aside 20 sessions with me where I will help people. They only have to pay $5,000 for a session for 1 hour, and where they tell about the situation, and we'll give them very concrete advice. Now, I've never done this before, and we're only setting 20 sessions aside because I don't really have time for more than that. But it is a way for me to say to businesses around the world, if you are a gardener or if you're a big company, it doesn't really matter. Let's sit down online and do a brainstorming about what you can do based on consumer insights in your region, based on your strategic position in the market, and based on the out of balances and therefore the opportunities for a new product, service, or a brand. So we're doing that now. Right now, we're actually officially announcing this Wednesday this week, so you're the first to hear this. But I'm doing it because I, time after time, get so many people asking us, we can't brainstorm, we can't come up with these ideas because we're stuck in the middle of the forest. We can't see the forest for just trees. So I hope this way will work. And I, by the way, hope a lot of people will copy me and do the same, so we can get the ball rolling and hopefully unleash people from that very tight muscle memory of the past, right?
Will you have to have some prior information before the session?
Yeah, the way it works is very simple. People actually go into our website, or they can go to your website, and then they submit their name and the company, and a little bit about the business. They submit it. Then we have a huge team who's evaluating who they want to choose based on where we feel we can add the most value, who needs the most help, and stuff like that. We'll go back to them and say, hey, congratulations, you've been approved. If you're approved, then they will have to fill out a questionnaire and send some information in advance. I have a team which are prepping me before I go on the screen, and then we go on the screen and have a conversation for an hour. They can, by the way, broadcast this internally in the whole organization, or they can have it with the whole marketing department or a senior executive department, where we can have this conversation. People can ask questions. I mean, without naming anyone, we had a session the other day, a test session, where one of our clients, which is a very large financial service company, the CEO said to me, how do you feature people in TV commercials post-COVID-19? Should they wear masks or not? And so we gave a very concrete answer back to that. And it's not a straightforward one, but we have so much research showing exactly what you have to do. So that's a really, really concrete question, right? And then there's other questions like, how do I position my company? Given the fact that my company is all about socializing and interacting with people, because I'm the biggest operator of concerts in the world. What do I do now? So, it's some really big challenging questions we get. So we did a dry run the other day, and it was amazing. Because I think through that interaction through the screen, something magically happened. And then what we do is we record the whole conversation. They can use it internally. And then we issue a simple report with all the different actions they have to take. And that's it. Then off they go. And I think this is a good way of working. I've never done this before. I thought, okay, well, let's help 20 companies out there and see what happens, right?
Interesting. Yes. Well, I definitely will kind of spread the word, and so it's interesting. Yes, I think because very often it's like thinking out of the box. It's like what consultants do, because when you are within the institution, sometimes it's like when you're once out, then you see, and it's easy, and you take the pressure off by making a strong, important decisions, because you are sort of emotionally more. It's like a doctor. I mean, you cannot operate on your own relative. They say it must be independent, not because someone is ruthless, but you're
emotionally intense. You're emotionally intense. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the case for everyone. So I think, long story short, on what's happening in our society now, you are seeing a tremendous amount of opportunities out there. I'll give you some insight, which I just find thought-provoking. Spirit sales around the world has nearly doubled. Champagne sales have halved. Go figure. I found that fascinating, right?
Do not have much to celebrate, right? So they want to bring themselves to unconsciousness, but they don't want to have.
Exactly. It's fascinating, right? We know that, and I actually wrote an article about this yesterday, that people perceive time differently. And so I think a lot of people will agree with me saying that despite me having all this time at home, I feel I'm dropping more balls than ever, and time is going faster than ever. And by the way, I have this huge to-do list, and I have only ticked 5 boxes on those 20 points. There's a reason for that. In fact, I'm writing a whole article about the psychology behind why we perceive time differently. So this is a fascinating insight. There's insights about how we as human beings are transforming and adopting change, and because of that, we feel exhausted. And people think it's because we're lazy, but actually we are more exhausted than ever before, because we're changing on so many fronts, which comes back to rituals. And this is fascinating stuff, but on average, you and I are executing about 150 rituals a day. But in war zones, people execute up to 400 rituals every day, because the more you're under pressure, the more you're severely impacted by fear, the more you execute rituals in order to avoid this enemy getting close to you. And so the more you execute rituals, the more exhausted you become, because almost like an emotional roadblock in you. And that's the reason why when we analyzed rituals at sports matches and games, those really good football players, soccer players, wherever they are, which were hammered the most, were the ones which were most addicted to rituals, because they had to put the chewing gum there, they had to kick 2 times, they had to jump over a line, they had to do all these things, and because of that, they couldn't really play the game in its full right. Well, right now, our brain is contaminated with a lot of emotional obstacles. both the real ones and the fake ones. The real ones is wash your hands, don't touch anyone, watch that door knock. And then you have the emotional one, which says, my God, I can't do this, I can't do that, I feel restricted, what about my finances, all this stuff. So we actually feel more exhausted. All of the stuff I'm telling you right now is representing also opportunities for products and services and innovations and brands. So I think if you are a business leader listening right now, do me a favor, ask yourself, what observational changes, behavioral changes have you seen among your target group? And I bet you if you really zoom in, and zoom in, you'll start to notice there's some really fascinating stuff going on there. And then you flip it upside down, and there you have a new business model, right?
Interesting. Yes, it's rituals. Interesting that I've read in your book, I think, when chickens are deprived of their rituals, they became aggressive.
They do.
And that's what people became aggressive as well, when they feel that there is their normal pattern of life is disrupted. Going with the friends for a drink or something like, and then it's done. I mean, you're kept in the flat. So and then you became aggressive, and then where this domestic violence on increase, etc.
It does, but there's also another dimension to this, which is, in the end of the day, we all belong to a tribe. And a tribe defines who we are and who we're not. It's a little bit like the reason why we want to have an enemy, because it can define who I am and who I'm not. It creates a sense of belonging. The bigger the world has become, in terms of number of people, 7.5 billion people, the more insecure we become. There's a direct correlation between that and is self-esteem. Mainly because when I see the entire world, and there's so many people, I very quickly can come to the conclusion, who am I? I mean, I will never be number one in what I'm doing. There's only 300 million people ahead of me. It's kind of, you've given up, right? And the transparency in our world has made it even worse. People think transparency is for the better. It's actually for the worse, in my opinion, because transparency means I'm comparing myself with everyone. Oh, this guy, he gets 200,000 in salary. I only get 180,000 in salary. That person had 260 likes and I only have 150 likes. And that type of mindset means we're contaminating ourselves with a cloud of too much transparency. So suddenly what we do is we retract back to our close-knit tribe where we feel safe. That's where we have our own little bubble of reality, even though it's completely disconnected from the rest of the world. And I think that is what has happened, that we have retracted back to our small little bubbles where we feel safe. And what happens then is that people suddenly want to build walls. People have fights in the streets against black and white. You have crimes and looting going on because you have these extreme bubbles conflicting with each other. And I think sadly this will only be the beginning of it. Again, that is a sad piece of news. The good news is I think you can easily come up with solutions to counter that. Again, that's the opportunity with a gap between being in balance and out of balance, right?
Right, interesting. It's fascinating. And I think first of all, we have to be grateful that we're alive in the first place and our loved ones as well. And another, it's really opportunity. I mean, it makes life worth living, I think. When we would be, watching TV, sitcom and, doing nothing, it's just boring in life, I think it didn't have much meaning at the time, but now we have a lot of meanings. We have really can reinvent ourselves, reinvent our business, become a better person, focus on our family more, on relationship, appreciate coffee with the friends, appreciate hugging. When you were saying about all this, hugs, I felt physically, and I'm an emotional guy, I need, because apart from my family, I haven't hugged anyone for 2.5 months. And for me, it's very unusual. I'm not I like physical touch, people I like, and I like strong handshake, and I feel good. But now it's gone. And I spoke to Alan Pease, this body language, and he said that the era of handshakes is over now. He said people will be greeting themselves like putting hand on the heart. Yeah. That could easily be, I think. So, but after saying that, there's still many opportunities, and really we have to be positive. Life, we'll only live once. And in fact, looking back, every generation faced one time or another, they faced something like that, whether it was a war, Second War and then First World War, and then, I mean, I'm not saying it's like, I think in your book I've read fantastic quote that we enter the storm, and the most important that when the storm is over, yeah, we change. So storm is given for us to become another us, and I thought, well, that's wonderful, really wonderful, and the positive, not kind of soppy that it's like wonderful, happy. No, it's not. It's work, and it's losses, and it changes, and it's pain, and it's hardships sometimes, and it's really. But on the other hand, it's movement. It's a move forward. It moves up, not down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is only the beginning of change. I think we will see a tremendous amount of change happening in our lives over the next couple of years. I think this is, as I said, this is the entry point into a completely new world. And I think that don't feel sorry for yourself. I know a lot of us, and there's no exceptions, have been affected and will continue to be affected by that. But I also have to say that we all, through generations, have been through something perhaps even much worse than what we're going through right now. Absolutely. We just become incredibly comfortable about the lifestyle we had, where Louis Vuittons were part of Medi's job and work and live and life, and suddenly it's not there anymore. It doesn't mean that you're not getting food on the table, and I think that's, at least for many, I think that's the positive news here, right?
But do you think we're moving to a better world?
I think we're moving to a different world, and probably also better world. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I'm writing about in the Biology for Coronavirus World, the free book there, is that pollution had dropped dramatically. I mean, I was swimming in Sydney Harbour and I started to see the fish. I haven't seen that for a long time. I saw even pelicans flying over the central part of Sydney. Haven't seen that ever in my life. And so I teamed up with IQ Air, which is the largest, most respected air quality assessment company in the world, based out of Switzerland. And these guys measured air quality in tons of cities around the world, and the air pollution has dropped 51% in Los Angeles alone. And I'm sure you may have seen on television some of those remarkable examples about before and after COVID-19 and what you can see suddenly. I think that's very positive. I hope that people will remember that and say to themselves, once we get back into the polluted life, that we miss what was going on. I think people will start to say to each other they love each other more. I think we'll start to see people who probably will travel less, because we realize that the Zooms of the world can do a lot of the tricks, not all of them, but some of them. I think we're going to realize that there's other means in life than just getting that Louis Vuitton bag. So I do think there's a lot of positive stuff going on out there. I think probably we'll get a little bit more in balance. And I don't think that hurts at this stage, despite all the doom and gloom, which of course is horrible, right?
I think ideally would be to change the whole business model, because I'm worried that businesses will start in promotion and marketing, and will be putting on pressure on us to buy junk and to buy things which we really don't need, and then the nature will become again polluted again. And really, I don't want to go back into this old formula. I mean, really, I hope that all these 3 billion people who were trapped and who were affected, and more, 5 billion people, really will come to their senses and start living, kind of fresh, and be more attentive to nature and to the.
I hope you're right. I think we'll see a change. I don't think it would be as profound as we all hope it would be. But you know what? If we just change, let's say 10%, I think it's all worth it at the end of the day. Because then I think we actually will have a greener planet, and probably we'll have people appreciating life a little bit more than what we did before. Again, not in any way, shape or form justifying the 300, 400, 500,000 people dying as a consequence of this is horrible. But I do think that, again, let's look at this with the glass full, half full rather than half empty, right? Because it becomes just too depressing, the other story, right?
Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Martin. Well, thank you for being with me and with my audience, and really appreciate your wisdom, which actually contradicts your smile, because your smile is more ha ha ha, and your wisdom is very deep, and your knowledge is very deep. But it's a nice combination, and so
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
To talk to
It's
you.
been a pleasure talking to you as always. I wish you all your best of luck. I wish everyone watching this the best of luck. And remember, when you go into a storm, you have to change when you come out on the other side. Well, this is the moment, right?
Exactly. So drop me links to the things which you were planning to do, and I will definitely mention it